to the Ken McElroy Show. We're going to dive in now to our topic today, which is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and what they're doing to try to curb the foreclosures.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
To start, I've never even heard of this bureau. Most people probably haven't. But
So I looked it up.
okay, so you hadn't either.
I hadn't. I was like, who the heck are these people, right? You know, these government industry. So what I found out was after 2008, very wisely, the administration put together this Consumer Financial Protection Bureau because, you know, of everything that happened in 2008. So what I learned is that they're in charge of things like auto loans, student loans, mortgage loans, and things like that. So there's an actual bureau over this. It's very, very interesting. So anyway, they came out with as you guys know, we're in the middle of this moratorium, and it's been going on for a while.
Yep. And
so what they proposed, I actually went to the Federal Register because what they do is it's a long piece, super legal. Mm-hmm. I read through as much as I could. I'm not a lawyer, but it took a while. But it's posted, so they posted first. Oh, it's up on their website. If you go to CFPB, and you can take a look at it, and then there's comments that you can comment on this thing through May. I think May 11th. May 11th. Mm-hmm. And then they're trying to get this thing initiated by September. So it takes a while, you know. It's like everything. Like when you do real estate, you have like these public hearings or whatever. So you can comment on there. But essentially, what it is they're going to try to make the servicers of these loans add all these additional regulations.
Well, so let's start. I had pulled some facts for this too.
Yeah.
So there's 3 million homeowners that are behind their mortgages as of February. And that is 2.1 million mortgages in forbearance at least 90 days delinquent. And this is more homeowners that are delinquent than ever before, even in 2010.
Right. Yeah. And in addition to that, there's, depending on, you know, the data, there's anywhere from 8 to 10 million people on the eviction side, which is also going to be kind of wrapped up inside of all of this. And so essentially what they're concerned about, as you know, which everybody's talking about, and I've been pounding away on this, are the foreclosures are going to tip the inventory scale and then create, you know, obviously a lot of a new inventory, which is going to drive prices down on residential real estate. Okay,
right. So and a lot of our viewers actually want prices to go down because they're looking to get into the market. So why don't we go over some of the things that the Consumer Financial Bureau is proposing? One of those things is they want to give lenders till the end of the year to be able to start the foreclosure process.
That's right. So essentially what they're doing is that this is this is going to hit the servicers of these loans. And so they're basically saying the first one was that they have to give them through the end of this year, because a lot of the loans, even on the original forbearance plans, are expiring starting in September.
Yeah, between June and September.
Yeah, yeah. So they're saying what they want is this bill to pass, sometime in the summer, and then that will protect everyone in those next few months. So essentially, what they're trying to do is keep everybody in their houses.
Right. And then the second thing that they're wanting to do is have the servicers give them options. So instead of foreclosure, kind of different options to pay back their loans.
That's right. Yeah. So it's essentially a pre-foreclosure checklist of things that they're supposed to do. One of which is to make these loans 40 years. So
40 years. Okay.
Yeah. So in other words, they extend the loan down over another 10 years. And
so that's not what they're behind on, but the actual full loan amount.
Yeah. And there's some provisions in there, that notification, and they have to prove that they had financial hardship through COVID. And there's a bunch of things that the homeowner has to do. And but this is going to be a hot potato because the National Mortgage National, let's see, Mortgage. Gosh, I'm trying to remember the website Mortgage Bankers Association. I think it's MBA.
All these associations.
Yeah, they're saying, this is going to be interesting because now they're essentially telling these, third parties what they can and can't do.
Right, which is they've been telling landlords what they can and can't do.
Right.
Now they're telling these third parties what they can and can't do.
Right.
And I would imagine it's going to put stress on these servicing businesses.
Yeah, there's another interesting thing that I learned about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and that is that Biden in February actually came out with something that said he's actually trying to fire or abolish Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. So the credit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So this is all part of this. I mean, this isn't exactly forbearance, but he wants to create a national public credit reporting database.
Well, that's kind of scary. It's kind of like how China has the credit system.
So that'll be very interesting too. But that is one other piece that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is going to potentially be responsible for.
So Kevin was saying all these things won't matter when prices begin to crash. It is going to, if they do this, because this isn't a for sure thing yet, this is what is proposed, it will affect the housing market, because if all these people can move their loans.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, there's a few things. One is not everyone's applied for forbearance. That's number one.
Right.
And in fact, it's a pretty big number. If I remember, it's in the millions.
Yep.
So not everyone has applied for forbearance. Mm-hmm. There's also what they call these zombie loans, which are vacant places that are, so you have that. And although a lot of those are already coming to market, and then I think that the real issue is, are the people depending, by the way, not all of them are government either. So a lot of them are private. So,
but this affected private loans as well.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that. It's good. That's going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So, so all of that's kind of wrapped up in. And so so Kevin's right, but he's also assuming that the prices are going to go down.
Right.
The reason why I believe the prices were going to go down was because of all this inventory.
Right.
So it's going to be really interesting to see. Essentially, the government's going to prop this up, keep people in their houses, and extend the loans.
But the people still may sell because they may not be able to make their 40-year payment potentially. But it will definitely curb the amount of foreclosures,
right?
If they do this,
right? And I might not get this exactly right, but there's what's called a loan modification. So this is essentially a loan modification. This is part of this, and essentially you're going to have to sit down with your servicer and work out some kind of a deal. And these are guidelines that the servicer has to fall within. And there's also some stuff on the servicer side that says that they have to contact you within a certain period of time. There's some things that they have to do in order to show good faith on their side. So obviously this is all up in the air at the moment, but
it's something you guys really want to follow.
Yep.
Because if we're all waiting for this big correction in real estate, and then the government is making it so the correction may not be as significant or happen,
right?
So let's discuss, the other side of this coin. So if everyone stays in their houses and the government helps all these people, what does it do for your first-time home buyers?
Well, yeah. What is going to happen is what is already happening is we're having some affordability issues, right?
Yeah.
So that's already in place. As we all know, prices have jumped a lot. Inventory's been really, really, really low. It is a good time for people to sell.
Yeah.
And so if you're not going to work, not going to have to live, near where you're going to work. And, this work from home thing is really a game changer for a lot of people. People can go where they want. And so I still think you're going to see a bit of that based on, this back to work thing and what that means. And all of that it's going to be interesting. And then also we're hearing some fallout with employers that around this vaccination. and they're saying, hey, in order to work here, you need to be vaccinated, and some people don't want to be vaccinated. And so there's some movement right now happening on the employer side and the employment side.
Well, and a lot of employers too, like I know people that have been laid off in the past couple of weeks, it's people are still getting laid off. It's not, everyone's not getting back to work.
Right.
So.
That's right. Well, you got to remember the PPP, the Payroll Protection Program money is pretty much used up.
Yeah.
Even the second round. And so now the question is how much money is going to, the infrastructure bill doesn't have anything around employers or any kind of safety net. That's very, very different. So there could be even more money thrown at this. And if there is, it'll come out in the form of mortgages or rent or, stimulus of some sort to stimulate businesses and all that. But at some point, you got to wonder, you got to let some of these things happen.
Yeah, because it really does hurt the people that don't own the homes. And something else that was interesting is normally on single family homes, about 10% are people looking to use them as an investment, and 90% of people want to live in them. Yeah, and right now it's 25% looking as an investment, which really is pushing out these first-time home buyers.
Yeah, exactly right. There's a lot of money chasing. I think everybody is considering that we could potentially have this really high inflation, and so they're trying to get into debt and fixed rate debt. And also, the one thing is for sure, there's massive disruption, and we're going to have a lot of pressure on the rental market.
Yeah.
I believe, because the housing market's really high. When the housing market goes up really high, what it does is it keeps more people into rentals.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it does.
Especially when those homes are being bought by investment companies.
Right, which is another whole point. So, and last night I watched Powell on 60 Minutes. I don't really think he gave us very much.
He didn't. It was really generic.
He's very, very broad. I think he's very bright, but it was very, very broad. It didn't really give us very much. I still think, I don't know how, a lot of these businesses are not going to come back, and I think we're going to be sitting on some high unemployment for a while.
So Nolan asked a really good question a while ago, but it makes sense now. He said, is the rising price of homes have anything to do with inflation? And if it does, then what are some strategies?
Well, I think the one that you can point to perfectly is lumber. If you look at the National the National Association of Home Builders, the NAHB.org, they'll tell you on their website. Last time I looked, it was the lumber alone added $24,500 to a home, a new home. So I think the answer is yes. Obviously, I don't know about you guys, but the supply chain issues are starting to show up right now everywhere. There's a massive market for like even used cars and new cars. I have friends that are in the car dealership business, and they're having a tough time getting new inventory. And as you start to see, you go to stores, like I went to some stores over the weekend, a lot of stores that would normally have things don't have as much. Now I'm talking about, we were at
Nordstrom.
Yeah, those kinds of things. So there are supply chain issues for sure. And so I think that is, I think that's going to be temporary.
Yeah.
But I don't know that there's a real strategy, when things go up, and if people are going to build, and we're building right now, the components for what we're having to build right now are definitely higher than they were a year ago.
Yeah.
There's no question.
Well, and is it really inflation, or is it the perception that inflation's around the corner?
I think it's inflation. I
Okay.
think it's both. But in other words, when there's a shortage of lumber, let's say, coming in, and you have a certain amount of people that are building, you got home builders and everybody, apartment, multifamily people all trying to get these lumber packages, and there's a shortage, then like anything, the price goes up.
Right.
So it's real.
Okay. And then TK says Blackstone types will buy everything.
That's probably true.
Right.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that, because that's not good for
that
the
happened,
small landlords.
Yeah. What happened was in 2008, from that crash, Wall Street got involved in real estate in a big, big, big way. and they started buying. We're talking about thousands and thousands of homes from banks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and Glorious had said, when do you see the housing boom ending?
Wow, that's the $1 million question. Well, I think right now we're starting to see affordability issues, and I don't think the interest rates can go down any further. So if you really look, it's already tapering off. It's already slowing down. So and also, let's don't forget, as government entities like the CFPB overlay things onto lenders and servicers, then now they're going to go, okay, I better be careful, because if I'm going to lend somebody like you some money and all of a sudden the government's going to say, hey, you don't have to pay.
Right.
The lenders themselves are going to, and I'm already seeing it on the lending side. There's lots of stuff going on. If you're borrowing right now in any capacity, it's much, much harder today than it was, obviously. So that's only going to make it worse as there's more and more government regulation around things. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be or should be. What I'm saying is there is. So those kinds of things make it more and more difficult for the banks to provide loans.
Right. Agreed. And Devin says, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho prices make me want to move to Texas. And I thought that's funny because, go there every summer. So. Awesome. Well, let's dive in here. We have a few questions from our premium. Katie said, if I want to get started, how can I buy when prices are so high?
I know. That is kind of the number one question. It's a very, very good question. So obviously, Katie, you got to keep defaulting back to cash flow. So, when prices are low, let's say in Texas or Arizona, people were still buying in San Diego and LA and San Francisco when prices were really high there, and you can still make deals work. So if you're buying for, personal, then a little bit different. That's more of a lifestyle buy. But if you're buying for a rental, which is primarily what we talk about, then you just got to keep focusing on cash flow.
Right. So it's different. Like if you're trying to buy a home for you to live in, you have to compare that against rent and valuation, and if you're going to be there a long time.
And your income and your, your passive income, your earned income, your portfolio income, the three types of income. Those are the kinds of things you need to consider. What can you afford? Where do you want to be? And if it's where you want to be, it doesn't really matter.
Right. But what we talk about in your master course is that it all comes down to cash flow on investment properties.
Right. So that was what I was trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to look at that other component. So, what markets are trending up from a rental standpoint and what markets are trending down from a rental standpoint. And we've talked a lot about this, and we actually have videos like this on YouTube you can go take a look at. And that's a moving target too. Every quarter that changes based on migration patterns and different things that the different states are doing right now. So let's not forget about that. I don't want to beat on different states, but the truth is different people are going to tolerate different things based on what's happening in that particular state. So so if a state's still locked down, as an example, I watched the Florida governor the other day talk about they've got a flood of people coming into that state for all kinds of things, even as small as their kid wants to play high school sports.
Right.
It could be that, or it could be, the state's open. And so all this stuff's happening. People are moving around based on these policies. And that's still an open item.
Right.
We still have some states that are very, very different, as we all know. And then you can expand that out internationally as well. So I think that you're going to find, if you're an employee that has to work somewhere and you have to drive there and you have to be there, you have less options than obviously if you can go wherever you want and work, kind of tethered to a location. And I think you're starting to see that. And then you're also starting to see, just from a tax standpoint, people are going, because that tax is, by the way, guys, the number one expense in your life. period.
Yeah.
It just is. And, they say that you work till May, for tax, and then the rest of it is yours. I know that's a generalization, but the truth is tax is a big one. So as you start to take a look at, you're going to have property tax, sales tax, income tax, all those kinds of things. You're going to start to take a look at all those things as we move forward, because people are getting squeezed right now.
So a lot of people are asking, there's so many of you guys, I'm just going to lump it into one, about different markets, Tempe, Philadelphia, Memphis, San Diego. It all comes down to cash flow. If you can find a property that can cash flow in any of those areas, then you should buy it.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. So first of all, great questions. It's hard to know whether Memphis is in a bubble or not in a bubble. And a lot of it's going to depend on the long-term viability of Memphis. So if you can still buy there for, say, $250 and your rent's at $2,000, which is you can still do in Scottsdale. Maybe closer to $3 now, but those are real numbers. Right now in Scottsdale, Arizona, a lot of people moving here. Tempe, you can still do that. I know that for a fact. And so those numbers work. But when you start getting into the $400, $500, $600 and your rent's $2,000, then I think it's a problem. So I'll just give you an example. I just got back from Texas. We just put 648 units in escrow. So 2 projects. Now, we're buying them for about $115,000 a unit-ish. And the rents are averaging $1,400, $1,500, and the properties were built in the 90s. And, there's a lot of math in there. But the bottom line is those numbers work. Those exact buildings, and I'm telling you, in Phoenix would be closer to $250,000 a unit, the exact building. So if we took those buildings, planted them in Phoenix. Now, I know they're different markets, and I know there's different dynamics, but if you just look at the cost versus the rent, because the rents are not that much different, but the price is a lot different. So that's why we're buying in Texas. So now, you just have to kind of take a look at that. But
you found a cash flowing deal in Texas.
That's the
it's
point.
Not that the Texas market is just amazing
right.
and anyone should buy there.
But I did make sure that those fundamentals are right. So in other words, it's right near Texas Medical Center, and there's a lot of jobs and there's a lot of stuff going on in this particular submarket. But the point is when you look at the math, and this is really high level, I get it, but price per pound, or my buddy says price per box, and the rent. And so you just gotta think that way. And yes, you're gonna have differences in the interest rates, and the taxes are gonna be different, and the insurance prices are gonna be different, and all that kind of stuff. Because in Texas, trust me, insurance is a lot higher than Arizona because of hurricanes. So there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of things you got to look at. But the point was, I'm chasing cash flow. And so you can, as long as you're just chasing cash flow, watching cash flow, and not so concerned about the capital gain part.
And cash flow is that month-to-month income you're going to be making.
Right. So like your property that you bought in Scottsdale, cash flows what, $600, $700, $800 a month, something like that.
700, I think.
700. Yeah. So, okay, that's good. So she's going to have $10,000 a year in cash flow, roughly. So then you got to take a look at your down payment. If your down payment's $40,000 and you got cash flow of 10, that's good.
Right.
That's 25% cash on cash. So you always got to tie it back to your down payment and the cash flow. So as you start to look at, a lot of people focus on the price per box or price per house.
Right.
So I can already tell you, just from having done it a lot, that if you're paying in the $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 a month and your rents are in the $200,000 to $2,500, you're not going to cash flow.
Right.
But, and so you got to keep looking.
But you have to work that math out on your own before you buy anything.
Right. And there's a zillion YouTube videos out there, guys, to, obviously you have to, it's just math. It's income minus expenses and then your debt. And debt's so cheap right now. That's why a 3.5% or a 4% mortgage is not as good as maybe a 2.7 or 2.8, which is something that you can get right now. Yeah. That little difference could be $80, $90, $100 a month in cash flow. So those are all things that you have to consider as you're putting the whole picture together.
And I want to answer Wally's question here because he said, what are your thoughts on the Florida market for a quick flip?
Well, first of all, I'm not a big fan of quick flips, but
Well, that's what I want. Right.
yeah, but that's okay.
Uh-huh.
You know, let's I just have to defer back to his math.
Yep.
So, okay, if you think the math is there, then do it. You know,
Yeah.
you're going to pay commissions, you're going to pay capital gains, you're going to pay all that stuff. And if you believe in the market long term, then it's probably better to hold it in cash flow because once you do all that work, then you basically have money again. You have a little bit more, but then you got to reinvest it again. And the question is, do you want to have it in cash?
It's a little bit like sitting at a blackjack table. You know, you can make money, but if you keep rolling it and rolling it and rolling it, you're bound to hit a place where it doesn't work out how you want it to work out.
Yeah. And you know, when people ask me that question about flipping, and by the way, I'm not just a cash flow guy. There's nothing wrong with taking capital gains. You know, my good friend who's a billionaire said, you know, I never went broke taking a profit, you know. And I had to laugh at that. I had to think about it for a second, you know. And he's like, you know, it has to be a good mix. So if you really want to get out of the day-to-day grind of looking for deals, investing in deals, and flipping deals, you know, you should really turn to a cash flow strategy, because then what happens is once you start to cover your monthly nut, you're financially free. Now you can buy deals instead of for the quick money. And but there's nothing wrong with flipping. But if you say the numbers work, I'm just going to defer to you.
Right.
And, you know, say go for it, you know, if the margins are there. But just know that you're going to have a tax and you're going to have the commissions.
Exactly. And Kevin on Premium asked a question. Oh, never mind. It just disappeared. Well, we'll go over to Vadim. He said, what resources do you use to find multifamily properties or single-family properties?
So this is the beauty of real estate, in my opinion, and there isn't one spot. I think a lot of people wish there were, but, you know, like I was talking to my friend the other day, and he was buying in, you know, other countries. And I said, that must be awesome. You know, he's like, it's super frustrating because, you know, there's not a lot of good data. Like, you know, you might have a home, you know, at one price, and, you know, one block away, it might be half. And so what happens with data is that it makes the market more efficient, a lot more efficient. So as we start to get more and more efficient, this is going to be much more of a commodity, and you're not going to have the highs and lows that you do in, you know, some of the other areas, you know. And so what I do is the best way to do it is first go take a look at everything that's been sold and find out who sold it and get on that broker and that salesperson's database. That's number one. And then just, you know, because it costs you nothing to send an email saying, hey, I'm looking for properties in this market. That's the first thing. You want to be on every single day. I get so many things from so many brokers, and most of them I just delete. Mm-hmm. And but I sometimes I'll spend 5 or 10 minutes on it, maybe longer if it's something that I like. And if I really like it, I send it to my acquisition guy, like I did this morning. I found a deal in Dallas, Fort Worth that was a value add, and hasn't been touched actually at all for about 20 years. And so, you know, so that's the key, is just getting on every single database. The big multifamily groups like I deal with, you're going to talk, it's going to be groups like JLL, CBRE, Berkadia, you know, a lot of the big companies like that. They're going to have some of the bigger deals. Those are going to be harder for you because, you know, they go out to 5,000 basically to 10,000 people, and you're going to have massive competition. So like one deal, like the deals that we just got in escrow, you know, they're dealing with 30 to 40 different groups, and it might have 20 offers. So you know, and so those big companies, they're not going to have the smaller deals. So when you say multifamily, I don't know if you mean 4 units, 8 units, or 500. So anyway, so just the key is find this. There's always people who specialize in those. The best deals you can find are the ones that realtors are the ones that they list. So if you can find a 4 or 6 or 8 unit that's listed on MLS, my experience that a lot of times realtors don't know what they have there. They don't understand it from a cash flow standpoint, and sometimes they're looking at it with different kind of metrics. So I would focus there.
Okay, and then Joe from Premium had a question on the moratorium. He said, when do you think it's going to end?
Gosh, Joe, tell me. I would love to know. So obviously it's super frustrating. We have the properties that we're buying. Each property has over $200,000 delinquent, each one. So you can imagine that. So we're actually still buying it, and each property has north of 50 people, somewhere over a couple $100,000 each. It's a problem, and there's a lot of people that are paying, and there's a lot of people that aren't paying, and there's a lot of people that can't pay, and so it's frustrating. But I believe that right now it's through June. I believe it's going to get kicked down the road a little bit. I do, and it's going to create more hardship on a lot of folks. So I think that you just got to wrap your head around the fact that whatever is going on now is going to go on through the end of the year.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that, but I really believe that this Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, they're pushing through the end of the year. And they're trying to wrap the eviction piece inside of that as well. Now, there's a lot of groups on both sides, and it's going to be a very interesting debate.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about this a lot, like vetting your tenants correctly. So for those of you with empty units that are maybe nervous about this, moving in a tenant into your unit, you just have to do some thorough research, make sure they have good credit. You are allowed to ask for bank statements, correct?
Yeah.
So you can kind of see their financial situation. I mean, you have to do extra homework, just like the mortgage companies or lending companies are currently doing extra homework.
Yeah, guys, listen, we're doing 400 or 500 rentals a month right now. So at all of our projects, and so people are still moving. They're still moving around. A lot of times people are focused on the negatives, which I understand the question, and it's something that we talk about a lot too. But on the other side of it, there are people. I mean, you rented several of yours during the pandemic. There are good people out there relocating to Arizona right now. There are good people relocating to other states, and they have plenty of cash. One of the things, we have a lot of senior properties, and I love senior properties for multitude of reasons. But seniors generally don't work, so obviously as a management company, what do we have to do? We have to dig in. Okay, so if they don't work, what kind of income do they have, if any? Because some people have pensions, some do not. So some people have different kinds of sources of revenue coming in. But at the end of the day, really what you're looking at is their net worth. They're bringing in their statements. They're bringing in what do they have in their accounts and things like that. So that's kind of where it's all headed at the moment. You got to really dig a lot deeper than you would have before. But that's just being diligent as a landlord, and hopefully you make your tenants fill out a criminal credit background check, and you're being super thorough on whoever you put in there. And it's expected. People. People expect, just like you wouldn't buy a car or, a TV or Best Buy without filling out a credit app. So it's the same thing. And you just got to make sure that they can pay for it. And so, not everyone is there's a lot of focus on the negative, but, there's a lot of people that are just fine.
Most people are just paying and fine. And then Corenda Group said, what do you think about landlord-friendly states?
Well, I think that's a really astute question, and it's part of the reason why we never bought in California and Oregon. So, Oregon has a rent control law, the state. They rolled it out. I used to be in Oregon. It's part of the reason we didn't go to Washington. I'm from Washington. It's my home state. I love it, but I wouldn't buy there now based on everything that's happening. And, I mean, just take a look. Just go online and see what's being proposed right now. It's horrible. I literally have friends that have a lot of property up there, and they're shaking their heads, and they're relocating and or investing in Arizona and some other states. So I think that's a big, big thing. People are starting to take a look at that. If you're managed money in any way, so you're looking at those things.
Yeah.
You're going, you know what, like, because the efficiency of being able to operate as an owner have to be there. And if the city or the state is basically telling you that you can't do something, in other words, hey, rent to somebody, but if they're not paying you, you can't get them out. Like, that's an operational problem for people that own things.
Right.
So yes, those are going to be bigger issues moving forward. And all you got to do is Google that. Which states are the most landlord-friendly? And you'll see there's a number of things.
They happen to be the ones that are growing the fastest, it seems like.
It seems, yeah.
For the most part.
For the most part, yeah. But it's a very astute question. And as somebody who's bought a lot of property over the years, it's definitely something that I consider each and every time.
And Janek said to try Airbnb in Oregon because they're not subject to that law.
Oh, okay.
So that's interesting
Yeah,
to know. And then Dan says, our last question, he said, can you talk about what exactly states like California and Washington are doing? Because he's not familiar.
Well, so with Washington, it has more to do with extending the eviction piece. So if you own something there, they're basically saying, even if the people aren't paying, there's nothing you can do. Right. Mm-hmm. So they're basically putting a squeeze on the landlord. In California, it's a little different because it's been going on for a while. Essentially, they extend out the eviction piece. So it's a very pro-tenant state. Right. So there's pro-landlord states and pro-tenant states. And so an eviction in California can take months, right, where in Arizona or Texas, it's less than a month.
Yeah.
And so it has to do with the time frame. And there's all kinds of horror stories in California, as an example, where let's say a small landlord has 4 units, 6 units, 8 units, and tenants stop paying, that the tenants can actually file bankruptcy, and then they're protected under the bankruptcy piece. And it's a complicated piece called the stay provision, and so the landlord can essentially lose their property, if tenants don't pay on time. So
wow.
Yeah, so it's really it really gets deep, but Washington hasn't gotten to that point. Hopefully they do not. There has to be a good balance, obviously, and there has to be laws in place, and that's why there are the landlord-tenant laws that can be very different from state to state. You just got to make sure that you take a look at them.
Awesome. Well, that was a great conversation today. We'll keep you guys posted as they finalize some of these rules around extending these, trying to mitigate these forbearances. And tune in next Monday. And if you want to be able to ask premium questions, make sure you go to kenmcelroy.com/premium, where we answer all your premium questions every Monday.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
See you guys.